Ladies and gentlemen, I am back. Episode 26 of Life on the Rocks with your host, Connor LaRock. Today's featured guest in the hot seat is my good friend, Calvin Henderson.
What's up, brother?
Not too much. How you doing today? You're
doing good?
Seriously, for anyone who doesn't know Calvin, he is the president and CEO of the social app Grip. So let's unravel this for a second. What is Grip, social app? I want you to unpack this for a second.
So we're just launching, formally. Grip is a story sharing app. It's about visual stories. The really cool thing about it is it's really focused on creators. So if you look at Snapchat or Instagram, the way they do stories, they disappear, they're temporary, and it's really focused on paid advertisers or collecting together random pictures and videos that people capture, right? Okay. On Grip, it's like the YouTube of visual stories. You hop on Grip, you follow people, every story they share, it's in your home feed, you view it, you watch it, you collaborate. It's really, really extensive. Very cool platform.
That's cool. So you can tail end on other stories. People can add stuff. You can have certain, I guess, stories for select people, right? And that's how it works. Okay. So I remember when I met Calvin, a number of months. Well, I didn't meet Calvin, but we talked about the app when he was first building. And you were talking about what I found with the app. It was almost like it was a cross between Instagram and Snapchat mashed into one, but better, more. I guess you could say more of an elite platform. So let's talk about this for a second. So you just formally launched. Like, what's that mean?
Well, we spent over a year developing this app, and we were in beta for a long time on iOS. And one thing that we found it's a really complex system on the back end and on the design side. So it took us a really long time to figure the platform out, how we wanted it to look, how we wanted it to flow, and how we wanted it to feel. And those are the most important things to the user using the app, making it really intuitive, really aesthetic. And we're finally at that stage where the app is just rock solid, debugged, and ready to go.
How many roadblocks did you have to get hit with to finally get into that position where you guys are ready to launch? I know there's probably times like I'm ready. Oh no, it's not ready. Like how long did it finally take?
It's way longer than you'd ever think. I
can imagine.
It's constantly you get these unforeseen obstacles. It's the nature of the game because you'll be going along, and when you first start out, you think everything you do is totally brilliant. You look at your designs and think it's brilliant, but then you give it to people and they're like, how do I use this? This doesn't make sense. So you get the feedback and you iterate, and then your next great vision is the same thing, right? It humbles you, and eventually you get to a point where you just bounce off of people's feedback and put something out that really works.
Exactly. It kind of brings everybody together in a conglomerate as a whole, I suppose, right? And how did you get this started? So it started with the idea. I want you to walk me through that. Did you have to go find investors? What exactly do you have to do to kind of produce this? You have a team of 2 other members, correct?
Yeah.
Like how did this process get together? I want people out there to kind of understand, what it takes to build an app, like how the whole process works. Let's go through that for a minute.
Well, it takes a lot of luck, a lot of focus, and a lot of determination. The good thing is you create luck by working hard. So I'm not a programmer, so I had all these ideas, and at the time I didn't do design either. So I had all these ideas talking about different ways to implement this idea, hashing through designs. And then we met Angel a little while later, our second team member, and really came together as a team. That summer, a year ago, we started formally developing it, and it was just a huge learning.
Where did this idea stem from in general? I'm just trying to get a picture here. So Grip, like where did you come up with this? For people out there, they actually don't realize that you had built an app prior to that before, right? You tried something out. So how does it, where did it start? Where did you get the aspect of Grip as a whole? And you're like, I'm going to create this social app.
So the original idea with Grip, remember very distinctly, I was out one day with a couple of friends on Manitoulin Island, and we were on this fishing trip, and those were the coolest things when they first came out, right? I mean, it's like, finally there was a way to share sort of a narrative. And then I realized I'm doing this, and I'm like, wow, I only get one of these a day. There's like 3 different things I'm doing at once. I'm fishing, I'm hiking, I'm driving around, doing all this crazy stuff, and it's all mashed together in one. That's not a story, that's a whole bunch of random stuff, right?
That's it, yeah.
And it just hit me that there's this huge untapped area of the market of letting people share in real time different stories showing different things unfolding. That was the very original idea at the time.
Okay, so that actually seems very interesting that you've seen kind of a niche in that market, and that's one of those things where you capitalize on it. The crazy part about it, I see from your situation, because I know you're very entrepreneurial, you see kind of the realm that's going into. Talk about how fast apps are changing so that you had to kind of make a pivoting point when you were building the app, because all of a sudden within months you have one app coming out, this is coming out. So where you're getting ready to launch now, you're ready in market. Like I actually just downloaded the app the other day. Like talk about that for a second, how you have to kind of be versatile as an entrepreneur to be able to kind of execute so that when the time comes, if someone tries pulling something out, how you can kind of bounce back.
Yeah, that's
a tough part, right?
in this game, pivoting is the art of strategy. You're pivoting all the time. We've pivoted so many times, I can't even tell you how many times we've done it. One thing that was really the first thing that kind of was a shock to us, and this happens when you have a startup, Instagram stories last summer. Because we went to TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco last September. Right in August before that, Instagram stories came out, and it was kind of a warning flag to us that maybe warning's not the right word, because it was really an opportunity. At the time, it shocked us, and we're like, my God, it's clear that Instagram, obviously Facebook's family of products, extending from that, are going to start using stories. So it's not just Snapchat anymore. So we really looked at ourselves, and at that moment, it just opened our eyes to how we need to be very fluid and constantly stay ahead of the competition. Yeah. And then going forward from that, we made some big changes in the platform in terms of the workflow to make it a lot better than those platforms.
Absolutely.
And then after that, the next big thing was Snapchat custom stories. Because that was something we essentially had that exact, like, geofences, privacy settings, collaboration, the exact same thing, very similar interface before that came out. And that's still in grip today, but we had to pivot some more from that. And then afterwards, Snapchat did Snap Maps, again, something that we were working on before, right? So we did all this stuff. And of course, we filed protection for all this stuff, but going out in the market, it kind of takes a little bit of your thunder away. So
absolutely,
you've got to adapt.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. I wasn't sure if we were going to get into that in the interview, but especially when you're in that moment, you're getting ready to launch, everything's going all like sunshine and rainbows, and then all of a sudden Calvin gets a text from me. You already had it beforehand, and I'm like, did you just see this? You see the new Snapchat upload, which is essentially almost the premise of one part of your app. So what the hell did you do in that situation? What did you think at first? Were you thinking, okay, maybe I got to pull the plug here? What am I going to do? I need to take legal protection. What was going on in your head? Because as an entrepreneur, you're sitting there, you're like, holy crap, someone just tried to pull the plug from underneath me. You've been building a project for a year and a half. Then that happens. What happened? Because I went and sat down with you, and you were very optimistic, which was great to see. Because most people in that situation would be sitting there, that's it, game over. But look, you still got the shirt on. We are in store. So talk me through this.
Pulling the plug's always out of the option.
Yeah, I don't like
that.
Never
pull the plug.
Yeah, never.
It's something that you can only learn through experience. Running a business, it's like going to war, because you get these situations all the time where your business gets surrounded because other companies do the same thing you're doing at the time. And if you lose sight of the big picture, you'll feel like there's no way out. The important thing is not to lose sight of that. You created something out of nothing in the first place. And it's really obvious if you think 10 years ahead, 10 years from now, if you look at Snapchat, it's not going to be frozen in stone. It's going to be a different platform in 10 years. Visual stories will evolve a lot in 10 years. A lot. And if you look at yourself in the current moment, if you're thinking about pulling the plug just because this particular set of features you had at the time, someone else beat you to it, that's just foolish.
One of the things
why did you do that, right? So it's easy to be optimistic, but it takes a lot of nerves. And when you first start dealing with those sorts of situations, it takes a lot out of you.
Absolutely.
You get used to it.
Yeah, you got to get used to being able, like you said, it's the game of the social app. You have to be able to pivot and everything else. So to back this up for a second, Kelvin, what got you started in general? So, you already had that prior to this. Just for people that are watching this out there, me and Calvin actually went to school together. We were both sitting in court one day, not in the bad context. We were watching court, actually, and that's how we introduced each other. I was like, I seen this guy in class. He would always be answering all the questions. We'd get a bang on the money. So I want to ask you, so you were studying law in university, but ideally I would argue that you've probably been an entrepreneur your whole life. So where did this start? Like the entrepreneurial spirit, the journey that took you to where you are now?
The entrepreneurial spirit goes back a real long time. I'm from Espanola, a really small town, right? 5,000 people.
Sorry to hear that. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's a really nice place. Anyone from Espanola is watching. But growing up in that town, you've got to be really imaginative, right? If you want to have fun and do stuff as a kid, because there's no movie theater, there's nothing to do except sports. I was never into sports, so that was out for me. And there's nothing to do. So you're walking around as a kid, you're too young to work, what do? You start doing entrepreneurial stuff. It's fun, right?
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. So I started off going to the golf course with a friend of mine, collecting golf balls. We'd wash them off, we'd sell them. And then from there I started mowing lawns, and this is like, I'm like 10 years old, right?
Wow.
And just the thrill of going out there. No one else is doing this either, right? All the other kids are just playing video games and stuff. You're out there doing this, you're making money off of it, and you meet all these people, and pretty soon you have this little mini empire. And I had paper routes, and it just compounded, right?
Yeah.
And that's really where it started. And heading into university, that entrepreneurial spirit is the exact same today as it was then. It just matures a bit. And the other thing about me, even back then, I was always really creative, right?
Definitely.
So So I played a lot of guitar. I like to write short stories, do things like that. And getting into tech, it was like the ultimate, because now I could create things. I can go out there and hustle it. I can build a team and really just motivate everybody and make it happen.
Absolutely.
And close deals. So it's like everything I like doing compounded into one thing.
Into one facet, and then that's where you get to actually see when you're into the market what's going to sell, what's not going to go in. How do you feel? So we did the 4-year skit at university. We were in similar classes. Like, how do you feel about, a lot of the time I could say millennials, right? They're just going to school. I always like to argue this point. I like to always bring it out there for observation. People are going to university. They're because they're sold a belief that this is going to get us the job, and then all of a sudden they graduate, then they don't know what to do. What is your advice to some of these students going out there that really don't know what they want to do? And that's a market I'm attacking right now, is the education system, especially the lack of clarity and commitment a lot of these students have. They're investing so much money into this. Would you argue maybe you should try to do something else? Like, what's your feeling on that? That you went in, your original plan too, I believe, was to go to law school, right? We were down the same route. And then you went into the entrepreneurial side. So talk to me about this for a second.
We're both reformed law students.
That's it, yeah. Wait, look, I hate to say it, guys, for anyone else watching there, not chirping, but look at all the people we went to school with. How many of them actually made it into law school? I think I only know a few of them. And that's the sad reality, is that none of them distinguished themselves enough. They all had the marks. We all had 80s. We all would have did decent on the LSAT, but what was that distinguishing factor? And I think that's where we had an inevitable failure. And I'm not chirping them. I really wish people would go to law school, but that was the common thread you're seeing. They're going in, you can have someone, and I have a friend out there, she actually came from, I think, a theater or drama background, had like a 95 average bank. She's in law school right now. But because she was different.
Congrats to her.
Exactly, and she's killing it. You know what I mean from that. But talk to me. How do you feel about the school system in today's age?
Well, I think the university system was never vocational. It was never intended for you to go get a degree and then get a job. I think that's something that really, that point of view is 20 years old, maybe less. Because back in the day, like the 1800s, you'd go to school, you'd study philosophy. Maybe if you wanted to be a doctor or something, you'd do some medicine. That was kind of vocational, but everything else was just about expanding thinking, right?
For sure.
It was in the whole idea of university. You go there to get this esoteric information that you couldn't get down at the local library. Well, now that we have Google, you don't need it. So there's a lot of value that's gone from universities. And if you look at undergraduate level education, and I study stuff all the time, right?
Absolutely.
Whenever I have time. And like right now I'm studying military strategy, very applicable to business.
I like that.
So you go on Amazon, you order textbooks for $20, study them at home, you'll learn everything in the program. You're just not writing exams or doing essays.
Exactly.
So I think the age of going to university to get a job is about 20 years old, and I think it's already dead and gone. Because in the future, there's actually a guy, I don't want to digress too much, but a guy called John Ruffalo from Owers Ventures, a venture capital firm in Toronto. He came up here to Sudbury a year ago, did a talk down at NORCAT that me and the team went to, and he talked about in the future, over the next 20, 30 years, entrepreneurship is going to replace employment.
Absolutely.
Either that or people working on short-term contracts for companies. Because with automation, low-level jobs are going to be dead and gone. Anything cashier, any sort of entry-level position is gone. And efficiencies in AI are going to rule out a lot of jobs on the administrative side. So the only way to really have a good income and get anywhere in the future is going to be building stuff.
Absolutely.
Or doing some form of knowledge work that a machine can't replicate.
No, that's huge. I think you hit on a point. And so you'd argue then innovation pays. It's the ones we have to switch our protocol to more innovative front, that you can't find a job, create one. This is part of like my political campaign coming out, just kidding.
Boom.
But no, that's actually, so you would argue that then it's the innovative side. You have to focus on innovation.
I would absolutely. And the problem with the education system, it opens your mind up to new streams of thought, but it's also very rigid. It's restricted.
Absolutely.
And you get in this mentality, and you probably had, I definitely had this, you probably felt it as well. When you start doing well in these classes, you get obsessed with your grades, right? You want to get 90s and everything, and you're always pushing yourself. And if you get like a 70, you feel like crying for 3 days straight. It's just, you get so attached to that validation, and you go out in the real world, you're not getting graded, and you can only measure yourself based on results. You don't get that in university. So it's kind of like going to law school, right? Because the mentality that you get as a lawyer generally is to be very careful, not take risks, eliminate risk. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to dive in the deep end right away.
You literally have to. And I would argue, right? Do you have something to say there?
No, go on.
I was going to argue. I argued that in not taking the risk, you're actually taking the biggest risk at all, because you're going to get
I love that.
Regret,
that's
right?
true. That's true.
And that's what you're finding with a lot of these students. So they're coming up and they hit this dead end road. They don't know any way to pivot. But you're the true entrepreneur type, where you're seeing all of a sudden, holy crap, you get punched in the mouth, tooth comes spitting out, and then you're going in the next week. You're like, I'm going to do this. Because I can see you're the type of person. I think another great thing is having options. You have to kind of lay it out. I'm not talking one of those things where it's all in on this plan, but have not even a plan B, but so much that you're like, okay, if this fails, I all of a sudden can go this way, and that way. But I think we have a lot of linear thinking with these college students, not so, or more so, I would say. And I'm not chirping the education system. I'm really not. I'm just chirping the mentality backed with it that we have to have other options, because you have this significant number of students graduating and they're not finding jobs. Go ahead.
Well, if you look back at history, some of the most innovative people of all time, Thomas Edison, Ben Franklin, successful people, Charlie Munger from Berkshire Hathaway, these people are mostly self-taught, right?
Definitely, yeah.
They, like I said earlier, they didn't have Amazon, but they would just go down to the bookstore and buy these textbooks and study at home and learn stuff, right? And I sort of naturally think this way, okay? And it just hit me like a lightning rod when I read this book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, that Charlie Munger put together, and it's about mental models.
Okay.
So a way of thinking that's not linear, and you go around and it's a multidisciplinary way of thinking, right? So you study engineering concepts, like redundancy in servers, right? And then you study concepts like mathematical concepts, like vectors and scalars and all this different stuff, and you look at stuff from the humanities, different philosophical concepts, and you aggregate all this together, and when you're faced with situations as an entrepreneur, you solve things from all these different crazy angles that you would never see because most people live in autopilot, right? When they're faced with a problem. It's, how do you put out a fire? Shoot me an answer real quick. How do you put out a fire?
Extinguisher.
Okay, why don't you just cut off the oxygen supply? It's a lot faster. You don't have to go for the extinguisher, right?
You
can remove the fuel source. You could throw some sand on it. You could do a whole bunch of different things. You could cool it to slow down the temperature, but everyone will say throw some water on it, use a fire extinguisher.
That's the first.
So that's how you solve problems. If you have a startup and somebody else does what you're doing, you look at it that way. Okay, how can I pivot this? It's not about getting out of a sticky situation. It's about evolving more. It's natural selection.
I like that. No, honestly, I think you're right on the money with that, Calvin. There was actually a book I was just reading today. I'm actually rereading it, and he was talking about, so take a situation in your life where it's this very extreme situation. Let's say, for instance, you get stuck on an island, or something happens where your brain, all of a sudden, all your senses, your awareness peaks up, your concentration. That's all of a sudden in that moment you realize that you actually have a little bit of an extra power within you, but all of a sudden a lot of us aren't tapping into that. So that's kind of offering the same philosophy. It's like when you have to do something, like when it's like it has to be done or life's on the line, you're gonna find the option, right? I don't think we're resourceful enough in a sense, but you can see just by the way you're thinking. So I want to talk to you about this for a second. This is another background people don't understand about you. You have a very strong psychology background, correct?
Yeah,
neuroscience, self-taught, right?
I took the core neuroscience program over at Laurentian.
Okay, cool.
But I went in as a law and justice student, so I didn't take biophysics, chem, or anything like that. So that part was self-taught, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think a lot of people, the whole psychology is really, it's a practical thing to have, because the more you understand people, the more you're going to realize their behaviors in terms of marketing and when you're going to sell to them and such like that. So let's back this up for a second. I think this is important. We've been hitting a lot of different topics. The energy's going. Let's go back to Grit for a second. So let's talk marketing. In my opinion, when it comes to social apps, I mean, you can have the greatest app in the world, but if you're not able to market it, has no marketability, then it's going to fail, right?
Yeah.
So would you think that's probably one of the hardest parts, or the next obstacle we're going to try to tackle with you and grow with it, is the marketing? What is the wow factor? How are we going to push this through the noise of all this information?
Well, getting your first 1,000 users on a social platform, insanely difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have a platform that doesn't have an audience, so content creators want people to see what they post. There's no audience, so there's no one to see it. And then audiences want content creators to follow, but there's no content creators, so there's no audience. So you have this catch-22 you got to solve, right? And there's only one way to do that. It's straight up hustle. We've got a whole bunch of cool stuff we're doing locally, which everybody will see really soon to promote the app. But it's just convincing people to try it out. With the state it's in right now, it's really cool, so I think people will enjoy it when they fire it up. And you just have to get this trickle of users in. And you might have, like, say, for every 100 downloads, you might have 2 people that stick around in the beginning. not the most encouraging metric in the world, but actually early stage, that's great. That means people like it. So you call a cult following, right? Like a classic movie.
Yeah.
People just love it. And from there, you scale it up. So there's this mode of thinking, and I think it's right on the mark, that do things that don't scale. A lot of people think like that in Silicon Valley. And that's when you go person to person and literally just twist people's arms. Try this app out.
Try my app out, yeah.
You can use it for this. So one thing, like we're targeting some people that are into fitness because you can demonstrate fitness progress and grip. Create all these stories. So you can have fitness clubs using it. And then you can go to artistic people to show their artwork evolving over time and take that angle. And then you can get into people that do things in the moment, like go to a lot of concerts and share that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's
You've been
that's
on
where it
a
starts.
wide open range. Yeah, I was just curious because I think that's like the way I see social apps, and me coming from a sales background, I like the marketing side. And that's why I would see a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm thinking, okay, to get this thing out there, to get it the national publicity, whatever it is, to push it to where it's got to go, because it does have the power. I've been on the app. I've actually talked to you a number of times as you're building it. I believe in it, and that's primarily the reason I call you on the show. I want to see the back end of this so that we're going to get started. You have your launch coming here. For anyone else out watching it, we're going to get them to download. We'll put a link on there so we can get that started. What can we expect next from this app? You're basically just going to grow it. You want to get the user base going, get some retention on it. Right? That's what's next here?
That's what's next here. We want to get a solid group of early users together that are really passionate about the app. And we love feedback, so we want to hear feedback from everybody to know what we're doing wrong, what we can improve on. And one thing, don't want to go off subject, but that's very important in doing this, is to be open to criticism. You have got to embrace criticism. And a lot of people are scared of that, right? Because criticism hurts people and people are sensitive, but you've got to get over that. You've got to just take it, because that is the only way to get better. You can't be in a comfort zone at all. So
Absolutely.
just lay on the criticism. And you sort of notice these trends when people get feedback, right? Because sometimes people just josh you and try to troll you. So you get these outliers.
Oh, you suck, you know. And then,
it's stuff like that. It's like, okay, whatever. But when you get a lot of feedback, you notice these trends. Like people are confused in this one part of the app, or this one part of the app, it functions really poorly, and you just aggregate the feedback, you notice these trends, and then you know that's something that you should look into. And if you make a change, you stop getting the feedback, you fix the problem.
Absolutely. I was actually just going to ask you the last question. You pretty much just answered that. The one I wanted to close this off with is this. Calvin, as an entrepreneur, you've taken a number of hits. What happens when you take that punch right in the mouth, you spit your tooth out? What's your advice to any entrepreneur out there that seriously takes it? Snapchat came after him, for crying out loud, and he's still here. He's ready to go. What is your advice to those people out there? Pivot, or what do you got? What do you got to just finish this off with?
Eat them and smile.
I like that. That's a huge thing. Where can they find you on social media? Where can they download the app? Let's hear it and drop it right there. Look right at the camera.
All right, we got a fresh Facebook page. Facebook @GripApps our username. Twitter, that's our handle as well. Follow it, like it, get on there. On the App Store, we're only on iOS right now. Search Grip, GRIPP. Pop up first result in the App Store. Use the app. Let us know what you think. And wait for some awesome stuff coming just down the line.
That's it. We're going to be pumping this out on Instagram. Let's get this campaign started. Right there, you see that logo? Calvin, you're freaking brilliant, my friend. It's honestly a pleasure.
Right back at you.
Honestly, love you, brother. Thank you, everybody.
Boom.